This is the video for the June 2024 Algebra Regents exam short response questions. In question number 25, this is a 2-credit short response question. What they want you to do is solve this equation for x. So the first thing that we want to do is get rid of the parentheses. You get rid of the parentheses by distributing and distributing. Therefore, we have 5x minus 10 is less than or equal to 3x plus 20. You want to get all your letters onto one side. I like working with the smaller of the two letters first, so I chose to do minus 3x and minus 3x. You don't have to do that. You could have subtracted by 5x on both sides. You could have added by 10 on both sides. You could have subtracted by 20. I think it's easiest and the best thing to use the smaller of the two letters. So minus 3x minus 3x. 5x minus 3x is 2x. Bring down my negative 10, bring down my inequality symbol, bring down my 20. Now you just have a two-step equation. Always get rid of the plus whatever or minus whatever first. So plus 10 and plus 10. So 2x is less than or equal to 30. Divide by 2 divided by 2. And you get x is less than or equal to 15. You have to have the x. You have to have the less than or equal to symbol, not just 15. In question number 26, given g of x equals x cubed plus 2x squared minus x, evaluate g of negative 3. So what they want you to do is they want you to take this negative 3, sub it in for x, sub it in for x, sub it in for x. You have to be careful. All right. We have negative 3 inside parentheses. If you don't type in the parentheses, you're going to get the wrong answers on this question. So negative 3 inside parentheses cubed, use the caret button, plus 2 times negative 3 inside parentheses squared minus negative 3. When you do that, you get negative 6. I think there's an easier way to do this question. I think the easier way is to type this whole equation into your y equals and then hit second in table. So negative 3 is negative 6. You do need to show the subbing in part, but the actual typing in the calculator is probably easier doing it into the y equals so that you don't mess up with the negative signs with the parentheses. You do have to show this part though. All right, to get full credit, you do have to show this part right here, the subbing in part, and then your final answer. In question number 27, another 2-credit short response. Each part is worth 1 credit. Given the relation R, blah, 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 state a value for x that will make this relation a function. So we need no repeating x values. So you can't use a negative 1. You can't use a 0. You can't use a negative 2. But you can put in any other number besides those 3 for x and be right. You could put in 7. You could put in negative 7. You could put in 7 million. All right. Any other numbers besides negative 1, 0, and negative 2. Explain why your answer makes this a function. Well, you can't have two x values that are the same. You can't repeat your x values because if you repeat your x values, it is not a function. All right. If you graphed it, it would fail the vertical line test if you had two x values that were the same. So if you graphed it with your number, for example, if I put in a 1 there, it would pass the vertical line test. You have to explain why your answer makes it a function. All right. So you have to say that it would pass the vertical line test. Or all of your x values were different. In question number 28, another 2-credit short response question. A survey of 150 students was taken. So the total is 150. It was determined that 2/3 of the students play video games. So 2/3 times 150 is 100. That's where I'm going to get that number. Well, 100 plus 50 equals 150. So this number has to be 50 right there. Of the students that play video games, 85 also use social media. So play video games and social media is 85. Now I have the 85, I have the 100. That makes this number 15. Of the students that do not play video games, 20% do not use social media. So of the ones that don't play these 50, 20% don't have social media. So 50 times 20% or times 0.20 equals 10. So that number is 10. That makes that number 40 because 40 plus 10 is 50. You can add the numbers going across to be 125 and 25, and that completes your two-way table. The directions do say complete the two-way table, so you have to find all 9 blanks. In question number 29, use the method of completing the square. You have to use completing the square to determine the exact values. Now, the exact values are not decimals, so we need to put it into radical form. Decimals would be an approximation because you'd be rounding. So the first thing that we want to do is move our C value to the other side. We want to move our C. All right. When we move our C, we have to do plus 30 and plus 30. Then we want to go into our thought bubble. Take half of the B value and square it. Half of 10 is 5. 5 squared is 25. Well, what do you do with that then? You add it to both sides. So we want to do plus 25 and plus 25. 30 plus 25 is 55. Now, in this step, we want to do reverse FOIL. What times what is 25? That adds up to 10. Well, 5 plus 5 times 5 is 25. 5 plus 5 is 10. So x plus 5 times x plus 5. Remember, these two are always going to be the same. Then we want to simplify it. So we did reverse FOIL, and then we want to simplify it. All right, we simplify it by putting it inside parentheses and squared. All right, squared inside parentheses. Then we take the square root and square root. All right, because then we want to solve it. So the opposite of squaring something is to take the square root of it. So the squared and the square root here cancel each other out. We have x plus 5. The square root of 55 is plus or minus. Don't forget your plus or minus because we need 2 answers. So plus or minus radical 55. Then we want to split it. X plus 55 equals radical 55. X plus 5 equals negative radical 55. Solve for x, minus 5, minus 5, minus 5, minus 5. We get radical 55 minus 5 and negative radical 55 minus 5. If you wrote it as plus or minus radical 55 minus 5, you're fine. We don't want to change them into decimals because we want the exact values. In question number 30, factor this. Well, there's no C value. I can't do reverse FOIL. Also, I have x cubed. All right. Those are your clues that what we want to do, and they always have you do this. They want you to factor out the greatest common factor. What's the biggest number that goes into both 20 and 45? That's 5. Can I take an x out, and how many? Well, I can take an x out of each term because there's 3 of them here, 1 of them here. So my greatest common factor is 5x. 5 times what now? If we were to do the distributive property, 5 times what gives me 20? Well, 5 times 4. X to the first, x to the second. We add our exponents to be x to the third. 5 times what gives me negative 45? Well, 5 times negative 9 is negative 45. X to the first is x to the first. Now we want to do reverse FOIL. What times what is negative 9? That adds up to 0. However, your A value is 4. So that could be a 4x and an x or a 2x and a 2x. Well, what we want to do is that is really the difference of 2 perfect squares. That's really 2x plus 3 and 2x minus 3. You have to bring down your 5x right here to put in front of those 2 sets of parentheses. In question number 31, this is our first 4 credit question. All right, what we want to do is graph the system. Notice that they're both in y equals forms, which is great. All right, so we don't have to rearrange anything. We have 1 point for the one graph, 1 point for the second graph, and then state all the solutions. There's 2 solutions, so 1 point for each one of those. Type it into your y equals and then do second and table for your points. It is very, very important. You have to label each line, all right, label each graph, and you have to have arrows on the ends. If you don't, you get it wrong, all right? You don't get credit for that. So second in table for your points, here's what your line looks like. Here's what your parabola looks like. State the coordinates of the solutions. The solutions are the intersection points. They cross right here at over to -1 down to -2. And they cross right here at over to 5 up to 4. You have to put it inside parentheses with commas. In question number 32, the table below states the amount of money earned over a certain number of weeks. Stat edit L1, L2. Remember, turn on your stat diagnostics. Go to your mode button, go down and turn on your stat diagnostics because we're going to need the R value in a minute. Write the linear regression equation. Equations have equal signs. So stat calc number 4. All right, stat calc number 4 for the linear regression equation. Stat calc number 4, linear regression. Sorry, I didn't have that written in there. All right, stat calc number 4 for linear regression. And you get this, rounded to the nearest hundredth. To the nearest hundredth is 2 decimal places, 2 decimal places. So y equals, you have to have the y equals -37.57x plus 215.67. That is the only answer that you can have. You get 2 points for that. If you didn't put y equals, you only get 1 credit. What is the correlation coefficient? That is your R value, rounded to the nearest hundredth again, 2 decimal places. So that is, when you take a look at it, it is R equals -0.98. If you write positive, you don't get credit. State what the correlation coefficient indicates about the linear fit of the data. When something is close to 1 or -1, it is considered a strong correlation. This R value is negative, so it is a strong negative correlation. It is a good fit for the data. You have to say strong negative correlation. 2 credits, 1 credit, 1 credit. In question number 33, use the quadratic formula to solve this equation. 3 is your A, -10 is your B, 5 is your C. They give you that quadratic formula on your reference sheet if you forget what it is, so be very careful, all right? Be careful at this beginning part. The negative of -10 is +10. And then be careful typing in your -10. You have to put it inside parentheses. -10 squared minus 4 times 3 times 5 all over 2 times 3. This is radical 40 here. All right. Put your answer in simplest radical form. 40 is really 4 times 10. Cross off the 4, bring out the 2. Now I have to triangle reduce right here. What number goes into 10, 6, and 2? Remember, when you triangle reduce, you don't touch the radical. We're not touching this 10, only the number that's out in front of it. So divide by 2's, you get 5 plus or minus. You could put a 1 there if you wanted to, radical 10 or 1 radical 10 all over 3. You have to triangle reduce there to get full credit. In question number 34, another 4 credit question. Graph the system of inequalities below. You need to rearrange them for y equals first, all right? So rearranging this first equation for y equals -2x minus 2x. You can't do a plain number minus an x, but we can switch around the order. Divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. So you get y is less than or equal to -2/3 x plus 5. Type that into your y equals, hit second in table for your points. You get these points. It is a solid line because of the or equal to, and we're shading down below because it's less than. For the second equation, plus x, so we have y is greater than x plus 1. We can't add together a 1 plus an x, but we can switch around the order, and it stays greater than. Greater than, first of all, type it into your y equals, second in table for your points. It is a dotted line, or some people call it a dashed line. Arrows at the end and label. I think I forgot to say that on the previous one. Arrows at the end and label. And we are shading above this one. Well, that creates this double shaded area all in here. I labeled it with an X or with an S on this particular question. In this particular Regents exam, they didn't have you do that, but quite often they do. So just get into the habit of putting an S there anyway. They want to know, state the coordinates of a point in the solution set and justify your answer. I chose this point right here, over to -3, up to +3. You can choose any point in this double shaded area in here. You can't choose where they cross because this is a dotted line. Remember, points on the dotted line are not in the solution set. Points on the solid line would be, but not on the dotted line. So why is it a point? It is in the double shaded area. 1 credit for graphing it right, 1 credit for graphing it right, 1 credit for a point, 1 credit for justifying your answer. And then we have the last question, the 6-point question. Courtney went to a coffee shop and purchased lattes and donuts. Now, notice that they tell you use X for latte and Y for donut. You cannot use L and D. You have to use X and Y because that's what they tell you to do. So it says that she purchased 4 lattes and 2 donuts for $15.50, 3 lattes and 5 donuts for $18.10. There's your system. That gets you 2 credits. Courtney thinks that 1 latte costs $2.75 and 1 donut costs $2.25. Is she correct? Well, you have to take those answers and sub it in for X, sub it in for Y, and see if it checks. Now, this one's tricky. They do this quite often. It checks in the first equation, but notice when you sub it into the second equation, it does not check. All right, it doesn't check there. So therefore, our answer is no. Use your equation to determine algebraically the cost of 1 latte and 1 donut. Here's my system again. That's the same system as from up above there. I want to multiply to create opposites. So I'm going to make opposites with my x's. You could make opposites with your y's by multiplying by -5 and +2 if you wanted to. I chose to make a 12 and a -12. So I multiply this top equation by -3, distribute, distribute, distribute. Multiply this bottom equation by 4, distribute, distribute, distribute. This created opposites right here. Those x's, those x's cancel out. Add going down, add going down. Don't forget to distribute all 3 times though. Solve this one-step equation. We get y equals $1.85. So the cost of 1 donut is $1.85. Sub it back into one of the equations. It doesn't matter which one. I chose to sub it back into here for y. So instead of 2 times y, I have 2 times $1.85. Solve that equation. We get $2.95. 2 credits for setting up the system. 2 credits for this middle part saying no and showing that it doesn't work. And then 2 credits for finding X and Y. Here's your scale. You had to get 29 credits to get a passing score.